Is Eren a psychopath? Or maybe a sociopath? I came across this tweet and that made me make this video because I love when our fandom throws out random definitions. And also, that is a very good question, so no worries. By the end of this video, you will also know the answer. Is Eren a psychopath? No, he's not. Well, I just spoiled my entire video. Thank you for watching, everyone. But for the legends among you that really want to understand why Eren is not a psychopath, this video is for you. And in addition, we will explore some actual psychopaths and sociopaths in our story, and also, what's the difference between them? So yeah, let's talk about it. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is the first video I make after reaching 10,000 YouTube friends, so most importantly, I want to thank all of you for supporting me all of these years. You are amazing and I absolutely appreciate all of you. Now for our video. You all came here to understand if Eren is a psychopath or a sociopath, which I already spoiled for you because he's not that or that. And if you noticed from the amount of quoted tweets, you probably realized the original tweet didn't get much love, to say it lightly. But a lot of people tried to defend Eren, which is not what I am trying to do here, but we will get to that. In a purely medical sense, the marks of a psychopath are the lack of emotional response or empathy for living creatures. And yes, humans are part of that group, but most psychopaths won't see the difference. They also usually lack social skills and prefer not to interact with people too much. Does any of this sound like Eren to you? Does this look like an emotionless person? If anything, I would say he has too much emotional baggage, but he's definitely not lacking in empathy. Like always, the fandom likes to come up with random names to describe things they don't completely understand, like this video I did fixing some of the wrong terminologies in our fandom. And I'm not saying this disrespectfully, because you know me, I'm always up for explaining things to people who want to listen. So this person chose the word psychopath, which as you can see is not even close to describing Eren. Now I said it before, so let me make this clear. This is not a video defending Eren Yeager. What goes on inside his mind is beyond ridiculous, and it shows on him because we see how depressed and broken he is. That is not the trait of a psychopath. So yes, he is broken beyond repair and clearly suffers from several mental conditions, but being a psychopath is not one of them. But are there psychopaths in our story? In my opinion, there are, and also sociopaths. But what is the difference? Most scientists claim both conditions are pretty similar when talking about the lack of empathy. But sociopaths are often considered more hot-headed, while psychopaths are more cold-hearted and calculated. Sociopaths usually have an easier time interacting with people, while psychopaths usually tend to keep to themselves. Like everything, there is a wide spectrum, but I like to look at psychopaths as a more sinister form of a sociopath. And as evidence, most serial killers out there are classified as glorified psychopaths. A good example of that spectrum I mentioned is Dexter, from the show and original book series under the same name. Dexter is complicated because he definitely acts cold-hearted towards his victims. He also enjoys his little hobby very much, and he is extremely calculated. That classifies him as a psychopath. But on the other hand, he cares deeply for some people even if he doesn't admit it at first, and he can lose his temper if someone hurts them. He can also be very likable. He learned how to imitate emotions from people around him, and that makes him able to live a normal life. That is something psychopaths don't usually do. They don't blend into society or able to maintain a social life in most cases. So where we can find examples of all of this in Attack on Titan? I thought of 3 examples and classified them myself. Like always, this is just my opinion and personal interpretation, so if you don't agree, it's all good. Feel free to tell me what you think, or if you think they belong to a different category, or don't belong here at all. So let's start with one of the biggest trash bags of this story. Gross. Now, I don't want to defend this guy, but I have to mention there is a social element in his time. Everyone hates the Eldians, so he is not different from that aspect. But, on the other hand, not all people take their kids on a fun day of killing an Eldian child, and that is pretty drastic. Gross doesn't seem to care he is doing something like this because he doesn't look at Eldians as people. For him, this is an acceptable behavior. But it's important to say that being racist should never be normalized, so it's not an excuse for acting like a monster. He is also a family man and doesn't seem to be the most calculated or smartest one. He doesn't have some plan. He is just one more person that lost his humanity and treated others like monsters. And that's why I classified him as a sociopath. A vile person with zero empathy for a specific race of people. An extreme racist who is also unapologetic about physically abusing aliens. Next on our list, Annie Leonhardt. Annie is also very interesting because she varies between being bored and showing no empathy towards living things and being outright vicious, like how she acted as the female Titan. Annie said it many times, she doesn't care about anyone but her father. So she lacks empathy for everyone else, but she still has someone she cares for. From an early age, we see Annie as an outsider. She was like this when she was a young warrior, and also later when she was on the island. Annie has signs of both conditions, but I have to point out it is mostly before the time she came out of her crystal. Her time frozen certainly changed her, but for the early days of Annie, I see her on that same spectrum, between a psychopath and a sociopath. And if I compared her to Dexter, he could act much more sinister, but he can also be much more softer and friendly compared to Annie. So he is more extreme in both directions. For our third example, we have Monkey. Zeke Yeager is one of the most calculated characters in this entire story. He almost single-handedly fooled an entire nation and climbed up the ranks. If you didn't know, Zeke is considered the most intelligent character in the story, alongside Hanji Zoi. This is according to Isayama, of course. Throughout the story, Zeke has been following his own calculated plan. Not only he did do whatever he needed to do, but he also took pleasure in killing people. We see him encouraging himself to have some fun while demolishing the scouts. Zeke has never stopped himself from killing someone, and he didn't hesitate to transform an entire village, including children, into titans. He will do whatever it takes to reach his destination, but unlike characters like Reiner, for example, he seems to take much more pleasure from that process. And yes, I know it aligns perfectly with his later narrative of enjoying the little things in life, but he is certainly not like other characters. Not to mention, he figured it was acceptable to perform genocide on an entire race. Yes, surprise, that was never euthanasia, it was always genocide. And again, watch this video to see why. But anyway, Zeke himself admits the amount of killing he did is staggering. In addition to this, Zeke was by himself most of his life, without many friends or social interactions besides playing with Tom and disappointing his father. So when you consider all of this, I believe Zeke shows some psychopathic tendencies throughout the story. So yeah, maybe Eren Yeager is not a psychopath, but his big brother shows more promise in that department. Now, an honorable mention to King Fritz, a true garbage of a person. To be fair, I believe most kings had to be sociopaths or psychopaths in order to do the things they did. But for a king, there is a large amount of detachment, meaning he doesn't really take part in things, he just delegates. This way, it's easier for them to look at people as faceless in order to rule a country. But this is also why the role of a king is often very lonely. It comes with a title, the same as some world leaders even today. But of course, like always, that is just my personal interpretation and I'm certainly not medically qualified to give a professional diagnosis. So I will leave this one to you. Do you think King Fritz is a sociopath, a psychopath, or simply a bag of hot trash? Feel free to tell me what you think in the comments, and also if you have more characters to add to that list. But at least one character won't be there, and that is Eren Yeager. Thank you so much for joining me today and for watching till the end. I want to thank you all again for bringing me to 10k YouTube friends. So if you are new to my channel or a long-time friend, I appreciate you. You are all legends, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And that is all for this video. I will see you all real soon in the next one and even sooner in the comments. But until next time, let me just remind you all to dedicate your hearts to all of humanity, inside and outside the walls.